Who are you? And where are you going? What do you want? For the next 24 minutes, we're going to design and attain your ideal life. On the Way to Wow Show. Together, we'll find the ideal path to get you back on the track to success and happiness. On the Way to Wow Show with your host, Kevin Bemmel.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Way to Wow Show. I don't know about you, but when I think of someone who's got life figured out, I think of someone who's taken a few laps around the track. But today's guest, Brian Feminella, is not even out of college yet. And while they always say promise a little and over-deliver, I think he's going to knock your socks off. But first, we're going to go have a cocktail. Ladies and gentlemen, our bartender today on the Way to Wow Show is Lord Charles Blaine Adams III. Now, I have to admit, I have never had the aristocracy serve me cocktails, but I have a feeling that Blaine is going to live up to every bit of that glorious name. So, among his many, many accomplishments, which is having been a bartender for more years than than he could admit to, and having worked in bars from the diviest dives to Crustacean in Beverly Hills, which is quite a place, I will say. He's also the brand rep for Whistlepig, both here in California and in New Mexico. And you just look at the way the man is dressed, and you know, they say if someone has to say that he's classy, he's not, but I can say it for you. This is class. The tweeds are beautiful, my friend.
Thank you.
So, what are you going to mix up for us today on the Way to Wow Show?
Well, the one kind of my philosophy as a bartender is I want to make drinks that are not only delicious, but they're simple, and if it's so easy that you can make it, then you have no excuse not to.
Oh, okay.
So I'm doing a riff on a classic cocktail called a Black Manhattan, so we'll call this the Other Manhattan, and it's a very simple 3-ingredient cocktail. We're going to start off by getting some ice in our glass, because that is just like the beginning of everything. And so I'll be using the Whistlepig 10-year rye. This is kind of the flagship of our company. It's a very high rye mash bill, almost 100%, aged 10 years old, new American oak casks. Okay. And you're going to do a full 2 ounces of that bad boy. And I like the high proof and the age statement on this whiskey for a cocktail like this, because when you have that higher proof, you have a higher concentration of flavor. So that means as we dilute this with ice, you're going to get a lot more character and flavor from your drink, and it's going to, you know, resound in your mouth a little bit longer, which is what we all want.
Great.
And then we're doing some amaro abano here, and traditionally a Black Manhattan will always have a Verna. But I like to mix it up because it's kind of a, you know, choose your own way. You know, kind of play by the numbers, paint by the numbers, if you will. And so you're going to do 1 ounce of that, and then you're going to do 2 dashes of your classic Angostura Bitters.
Okay.
And then after that, we get to stir, and this is when, you know, I get to stand here and regale you with whatever stories we're feeling, or ask you how your day's going.
There you go. You can tell us about being a laird, right?
Yeah, well, you know, it's a little bit of an honorary title. I love the world. So Scotland is doing a really cool program where if you buy some land, you get to be a lord, and then they will not develop the moor. So you actually get to protect the Scottish moors, which,
oh, wow.
That's a double win for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Especially for anyone who likes scotch.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as we mix your drink in a stirred cocktail, I kind of hearken stirred drinks to like driving a stick shift. You know, it takes a little, to get it just right, it takes a little more finesse. You know, while if you do a shaken cocktail, it's not bad by any means, but it's a little more automatic. It's easier to get those right every time. So as you're watching, if you want to taste while you go, you can. Otherwise, I let it grow about a third. That's when you know the ice is kind of diluted to a point.
That much. Okay.
Yeah, you really want to open up all the flavors. There's a point in an aromatic drink like this we call flowering, where all the ingredients finally become one. And it's a nice little window. And once you hit that little area, it's great. You got to be careful though, because you can over dilute it.
And that's always my concern is you know, I'll dilute it down and won't get the impact of it.
Right, but that's also why we use high proof stuff to cover our mistakes in case they're there. And then I get little ice chips in this guy because nothing's ever perfect.
Oh, that's all right.
And the Lord title might fool you, but I really do feel, you know, as much as we all love drinks and drinking, we can't take it too seriously because at the end of the day, we're just having a cocktail, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're not having fun, then you need to kind of seriously consider why you're drinking.
It's got to be for enjoyment.
Right?
Absolutely.
And the final thing we're going to do is we're just going to add a beautiful cherry garnish like you would in a traditional Manhattan.
Oh, okay.
I like to plunk them down on the bottom. You can put them on a pick. I kind of like it at the bottom like this though, because it's kind of like, you know, the center of a Tootsie Pop. Once you finish your drink, you get a little treat.
Oh, okay. Well, I love Tootsie Pops. Yeah, absolutely.
And after that, we get to enjoy.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Cheers.
Cheers. So our bartender, Lord Charles Blaine Adams III, made it. I love saying that. This is the other Manhattan.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Tell me what you think of that.
Wow.
Yeah. Nice layered flavors.
It's very good. That was just made?
Yeah, he just made that up, I think, on the fly. So one of the neat things about the show is the bartenders we get are very, very creative.
That's incredible.
We call them wow tenders, right?
Very
The
fitting
Way to
for the
Wow show. Exactly. So Brian Feminella, a new friend of mine, I think we met, about a month ago,
Yes.
right? So we are both Trojans.
Fight on.
Fight on. Sorry for all of you who go to that little trade school across town in Los Angeles.
Ouch.
It's okay. One of my longest standing friends, Professor Delroy Baugh, is a professor at UCLA, and he tells me at every lecture he gives, having gotten his PhD at USC, he reminds people, fight on Trojans. So, you know, Brian is definitely young enough to be my son, and so I'm going to brag on him like he is my son a little bit. You know, as a college student, and I've dealt with a lot of young people in the military and also in civilian life recently out of college. They oftentimes are struggling with the two questions we're dealing with here on the Way to Wow show. Who are you and what do you want to be? And Brian has already figured out the answers to those questions. It's, in some ways, really astonishing at your age that you've done that. And so,
Thank you.
You know, your ROTC, or I guess you started NROTC, Navy Reserve Officer Training Corps, but you're actually going to go into the Army. You'll be a second lieutenant, right?
So I started as a reservist in the actual regular Army, and actually I went right into boot camp at 17 from high school.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But then you went to college under an ROTC scholarship,
For
right?
Army, yes.
Yeah. And but at the same time, and it's not easy to go through college on an ROTC scholarship because you're basically doing a two-track program, military science and also your major. Brian is the startup of is the CEO of a startup called SoundMind. They're developing an app based on music to help first responders deal with PTS, post-traumatic stress. So, we've talked, quite a bit over the last
Absolutely.
few weeks, and really what I'd like to help our viewers learn about you is how did you figure out your way to wow, already when there are people my age who still haven't figured it out. So I'm going to kind of throw the floor open to you and let you talk to us about that.
Of course. Well, I wanted to thank you for inviting me onto the show, and I'm glad we'd be able to become friends. And, Trojans care for Trojans as always.
Absolutely.
I think for me, I'm definitely young. I'm definitely on the younger side. People usually tell me, oh, you're very young to be handling PTS. You're very young to be, starting a company about helping people with PTS, whether it be active duty military, whether it be first responders now in our COVID-19 pandemic from across the world. Whatever the situation may be where one develops not only PTS, anxiety, or depression, people, usually sometimes unfortunately tend to look down upon and go, you're too young to deal with that. And that's definitely been a driving force for me, is, realizing that, people will never fully understand and comprehend that if you've experienced PTS or anxiety or anything like that, you can be 13 or you can be 80. And no matter what your age is, once you have experienced something like that, you'll understand. So for me, I grew up in New York, and I left at 17 to go to boot camp. I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, so a little hot.
Little culture shock.
So definitely coming from Long Island, it was a huge culture shock for me. I'm growing up very coddled. My parents raised me very well, and I have so much respect for them. And a lot of things I do is to make them proud. And after going down to South Carolina, I got moved into my AIT unit, which is where I kind of did my training for my specific job, and moved on with that. And from there, I learned a lot. I met a lot of people from all different ages. And I got really close with another 17-year-old who was also in my unit, and I guess you could say company at the time. Mm-hmm. And after that, I had the fortunate opportunity to go to USC. So, as you said before, fight on Trojans, but that's really where I began to develop this passion that I have to be able to figure out who I was. And for me, it was getting a phone call at 18 years old that, one of my friends who I served alongside with, had a traumatic incident. And that traumatic incident led to him losing a majority of his memory, in which I was a part of those missing pieces. And I think that was the first time where I kind of said, whoa, this affects me in a way that I don't know how to cope with and handle myself. And from there, it really was, a very, I guess you could say, privileged lifestyle besides the military, and seeing a friend and having a friend, forget me and our memories and our brotherhood was really impactful on who I was, not only emotionally, but professionally. So from there, I went to USC to study cyber intelligence and political science. Mm-hmm. And I've always had a commitment to public service, whether it be from the military to my time as a junior firefighter for 10 years back at home, to also working as an EMT on the ambulance for about a year before I went to the military. And I was like a junior EMT because I couldn't be full-time at that young age. Right. But I've always had a commitment to that public service. And I found a dedicated professor, Dr. Scott Spencer at USC, who has spent his whole life and his doctorate studying ethnomusicology. And ethnomusicology is really where I learned about the Natasonics. And the Natasonics is the relationship between sound and violence, and how one with PTS or a traumatic experience tends to allow sound to lose all informational context. Whereas you and I would relate a car horn to a car horn, where that individual might just relate a loud noise to you want to make it stop. And really learning auditory triggers that associate with PTS, learning a lot about how one's anxiety can contribute to any auditory triggers, or can contribute to one's, ability to go out in public with the loud sounds. That is what I did a bulk of research on for 2 years. I did about 6 to 7 research studies. And then finally, I actually was able to be published in, a Harvard journal, and got to speak at Harvard in January, right before the pandemic hit. And from there, I really kept growing. And now I, 2 months ago, really said to myself and sat down, what you just asked me, wow, I really have come a long way and have understood. And now we are officially called SoundMind Corporation, and we are working every day to create mobile technologies through a mobile application for those that are struggling with PTS or anxiety predominantly. And yes, you are right, we are focusing on first responders. And how I came about with all of that was because of not only a personal experience, but also witnessing friends in the college situation, in the first responder, because I've been able to be involved in all these different communities at such a young age, and I'm so privileged to have been able to do that. And from that, you really get to see people from all walks of life and what they've struggled with, especially those who even have gotten not only traumatic experiences that they've had happen to them, but traumatic brain injuries or whatever it may be that have alluded to the change and adaptation. And my passion to help these people, my passion to find a solution to that, relates back to my public service. And I am so honored to be the CEO of Sound Mind and to see what we're doing every day to help people. But that all came from being exposed to how much of it I was in the military, in the academia, in my personal life, in my professional life, and seeing people from all these different walks of life really led to not only Sound Mind, but to who I am as a person. And beyond Sound Mind, and as I begin to grow and really take form to my mature and adult self, I definitely want to continue down the public service path. I want to continue making Sound Mind into as big as I can, helping as many people as I can, continuing my military service, and eventually one day I would absolutely like to run for public office, as I want to continue doing that public service.
So it's interesting. A few episodes ago, we had a friend of mine on who works at NASA.
Wow.
And I asked him, sum up what you've told us in the interview for us. And he said, just say yes. We live in a society where it is like, just say no, just say yes to opportunity. From what you've just told us, when you were presented with an opportunity to expand yourself, experience something outside of your realm of comfort, you embraced that opportunity, even though it probably wasn't a 100% comfortable thing to do, and it's made you this amazing individual.
Thank you.
At what is, by your own admission, a very young age. It's really astonishing. So, what advice would you give to, I would hope that even people my age would hear your words and have them resonate with you, but maybe not. But so at least for your peers,
absolutely,
what advice would you give them that would help set them on the path that you're already walking?
That's it's a loaded question. And I think that a lot of people, tend to get a bunch of different advice, right? Mm-hmm. So my biggest, piece of advice that I can give, and I'm sure I'm only going to be one piece of advice in someone's journey, but it would definitely be to listen to all the advice. But just because you're listening to someone's advice doesn't mean that every time somebody gives you advice, you shift course. Because if you continue to shift course, you'll never end up anywhere. Because, you could tell me to go left. I could tell you to go right. And my other friend or my other colleague or my other advisor or my mentor could tell me to go straight. And then you're like, okay, I went left, I went right, I went straight, and I'm still back in the middle. And the goal is to not be where you are. The goal is to move forward. And to do that, it really requires that you believe in yourself. That is the number one thing. I have kind of three things. Believe in yourself, no matter how crazy your idea is, no matter how difficult it may be to accomplish. Find the people that believe in you. Become the leader that people believe in, no matter what your age is, and embrace it. Because one thing that people, no matter what age, respect is if you embrace what you love and you do it humbly. And my second piece of advice would be, yes, listen to the advice you are given from others, your mentors, your family, whoever it may be. But just because you're listening doesn't mean you have to act on every piece of advice. It's good to think about, it's good to take a mental note of all the things you're told. But in order to move forward, you have to follow your dreams, no matter if people are going to doubt you. And the third and biggest piece of advice that I could give to anybody is don't quit. Because you're absolutely going to fail at first. You're absolutely going to be told it's not feasible, it's not going to work, especially in a startup community, in a tech community at my age, when people say, no way, you have to find yourself. If you can find your own passion and you know that you're committed, you can move mountains, because that's the most important thing. And anybody, no matter what your age is, I have to really give the advice that it's okay to try and it's okay to dare to be different, because that's what makes the community that we have in our world, especially here in America, so unique. People have been given the opportunity to challenge themselves and challenge others, and that has led to such a diverse ecosystem that we all live in.
I mean, it. So there's a saying in Judaism: "Who is wise? He who listens to all people." And I hope you, our precious viewers, will listen to what Brian has just said. You will not only just take it on board, but take it to heart. Somehow, and maybe because of his parents or the opportunities he's been able to have, he has found true wisdom. And hopefully you've watched the show long enough to know I am not into hyperbole at all, and I don't believe that everyone has wisdom. But I will tell you, I've met a lot of young people in my life, fortunately. This young man, Brian, is speaking wisdom that you can base your life on. And I hope and pray that you will listen to him again. Just replay this part of the show a couple of times to really absorb it.
Don't go on fast forward, though.
Right, not on fast forward. Listen to it. Let it permeate your heart. And you will be on your way to wow. Brian, I wish we had 100 days to sit and talk.
Thank you very much.
Instead of the 10 or 12 minutes that we have. But I deeply appreciate you coming here today, sharing your words with us. I have no doubt that over the succeeding years, we are going to hear and see big things from you, and it'll be a joy to watch your life progress. Thanks so much for coming on the Way to Wow show.
Thank you, Kevin. You gave me the chills. It means a lot, and it definitely means a lot to be able to be a part of this and to meet people like yourself that not only inspire myself, but inspire others. And I think that, the Way to Wow show is definitely a way for people to see how much they can do if they just try.
So you brought a little something for our collage?
I did. I actually this is the very first Sound Mind sticker that was ever created, and it was created by my co-founder's sister, because she works on a sticker store on her free time.
Oh, okay. Anywhere you want it.
Absolutely. Let's put it right here. Nice and
perfect.
Nice and proud up there. Sound Mind.
Absolutely.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Thank you again for having me.
Thanks for joining us this week. Wasn't Brian Feminella amazing? Such wisdom in such a young man. Remember his 3 points. Believe in yourself. Listen to advice, but don't necessarily follow it. And finally, don't give up. And if we follow that, we'll find our way to wow. Courage at all times, my friends. Marie, you're still my belle.